When graphing a logarithmic function, one of the more important things to know is what the vertical asymptote of the function. You can find this out by finding the domain of that function. Just take the argument and set it greater than 0. You can also use the various transformations to graph these functions, but a TI-83 or 84 table function will work extremely well. If the calculator you have doesn't have a table feature, not a big deal. You can just plug the numbers directly into the function that you want to get your points that way. Now, many calculators don't have the ability to do different bases, so I'm actually going to limit my examples to base 10 and natural logs. So we're going to graph this function first. F of x equals 2 minus log x plus 1. So first things first, I'm going to find the domain by setting the argument x plus 1 greater than 0. So I'm going to get x is greater than negative 1, which means my vertical asymptote is going to be x equals negative 1. So I'm going to make my vertical asymptote red just so I can see it easier. And here we go. So there's my vertical asymptote. All well and good. Now it's time to find out some values. So let's get our calculator working. So here we go. Here's our calculator. And now we're going to plug in our function into y equals. So 2 minus log x plus 1. All typed in, well and good. Second window to make sure we're starting at 0 and 1. Everything's on auto. Now we're going to go to second and graph to get our values. And we can see again what negative 1, we got some errors, so we know nothing exists past negative 1 on the left. So let's pick some values out. I'm going to just pick the first 3. So the first one I'm going to use is 0, 2. Next one is 1 and 1.7. And last is going to be 2 and 1.5. 2, 1.5. So at 0, 2 here, 1 and 1.7 here, and 2 and 1.5 here. So actually make this one just a little bit higher. Not perfect, but that's good. So we see the shape that is decreasing. So since it can't exist over here, we're going to start from the top. It's going to be going down and then connect the dots, something like that, going in this direction. Hopefully you'll connect the dots a little bit better than I did. So there we go. That's what it looks like graphed, but let's confirm it with the calculator. Let's hit graph. And there it goes. Now you don't see it right here because the 83s, 84s sometimes have trouble graphing vertical lines, so it'll just disappear. But trust me, it's there. Still the same basic shape, so we are good for this one. Now next, we are going to graph f of x equals 2 ln of negative x plus 3 minus 1. So again, I'm going to find out the domain, which is going to be negative x plus 3 is greater than 0. So I'm going to subtract 3 over. Negative x is greater than negative 3. And then multiply everything by negative 1. X is less than positive 3. So that just means our vertical asymptote is x equals 3. So let's graph our vertical asymptote at 3. So right here. And now we're going to find some points so we can make our lives very simple to graph. So let's go in and put it into y equals, get rid of the old one. So we're going to have 2 ln of negative x plus 3. Make sure that you use the negative here, because up here is a minus. So if you confuse the two, the calculator gets upset and starts throwing errors around. So be mindful of that. Minus 1, so 2 ln of negative x plus 3 minus 1. Get our window. Everything's looking good. Second graph, get our function values. Now we have a bunch of errors after 3, which again, not a big deal. That's what the domain says. So everything has to be less than 3. So I'm going to pick the first value, 2, -1. So 2, -1. Then I'm going to pick 1 and 0.4. And then I'm going to pick 0 and 1.2. 1.2. Now I'm going to graph these. So at 2, -1 here, 1.4 about here, and then 0, 1.2 right about here. So we see the graph is kind of doing this shape here. So again, it's going to ride up the vertical asymptote, and then it's going to curve off something like that. That was a really bad curve, so let me just kind of make it look a little bit better. Something like that. So again, let's verify it with our calculator. So just hit graph, and there it goes. So I drew going the other direction, but it's the same thing essentially. So it looks pretty good doing that. So again, get your domain, get your vertical asymptote, find a couple points, about 3, plug them in, graph them as best you can.